ranks the highest per capita for being a safe haven for transgender individuals in Minnesota. And can I just say, we can talk about economic growth and feeding children and growing the economy and creating jobs simultaneously with talking about everybody's human rights matters, and we shouldn't be demonizing them. You can do both.
Joining me now, my friend Auron MacIntyre, host and columnist at The Blaze. Auron, there aren't very many tranny people, and the issue itself is unbelievably unpopular. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to read poll numbers and know that this is a losing issue for a political party. It's well known, well established, yet they can't let it go. Can you explain why?
Yeah, I think it's time for us to drop the illusion that democracy is somehow responsive to the will of the American people. Like you said, it's very clear that on every level, this is a massive losing issue for the left. And yet it's central to their coalition. Even after Trump won and they were devastated by this huge sweep that came in, they got down, they sat down, they said, what are we going to do? What are we going to change? How are we going to change our messaging? Maybe we've gone too far. Maybe we should put the woke away and go back to economic populism or something, but they can't do it. The activists don't let them do it because this is at core their religion. This is what defines their movement. The left needs to invert hierarchies. It needs to put those that otherwise would be last in society, would be considered the outcasts of society. They have to put them first in everything. And so it's absolutely necessary for them to ultimately invert everything that is good and true and beautiful. They cannot allow children to grow up under the auspices of their parents following their religion. No, they need control of these children. They need to brainwash them from the very beginning. Child mutilation, child sacrifice, this is the heart of the left in every sense.
Auron, did we, I mean, I don't want to put blame on us here, but maybe we deserve some. Did we on the right, meaning the whole general term on the right, did we fail in heading this off? It can be hard to accept evil for what it is, right, when you're first introduced to it, but did we fail and allow ourselves to get here some way?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, we are catching up with technology. This is a constant problem for all societies in the current age, but very much so for conservatives. They don't know what's going on. They don't understand the technological advancement. They don't really grasp the extent of the scientific procedure that's being applied. And they just say, well, doctors, they must know what they're doing. I don't want to hurt a child. I feel bad. Of course you feel bad for a child who's confused and possibly suicidal. And many parents were blackmailed into saying, well, I have to go along with this because if I don't go along with this, I am ultimately facilitating the suicide of my child. Maybe they'll self-harm and it will be my fault. And what we recognize is that once we caught up with the science, once we really understood what was being done, none of this was reversible. None of this was interchangeable. All the things that we were sold that, well, the child can just walk away from this. Everything can kind of just be swapped back into place. None of this is true. It's absolutely devastating for the child. It ruins their life. It makes it impossible often for them to have children, have decent relationships. It often drives them closer to self-harm. But we didn't have that data early on, and people just wanted to trust the science. They just wanted to trust the experts. And what we've seen from COVID and others is actually you can't trust even medical professionals. They are just as dedicated to this religion as your average progressive activist.
Good grief. Amy Klobuchar said this at their meeting.
Farmer in New Mexico relied on immigrant workers who are too afraid to do it anymore. And we have a message to Donald Trump. Immigrants don't diminish America, they are America.
Immigrants are America, right, Auron?
I mean, they really just give the game away here, right? Like, we're not replacing you. We're just making it clear that you're not an American and these new people are the Americans. It's not a great replacement. It's more of a great shuffling around, right? But no, obviously, this is the Democrats' plan. They've announced it over and over and over again. They hate the existing population of the United States because those people still yearn for the traditions and heritage and history of our people. They recognize that we are barriers to their power because we believe in things like family and faith. We believe that there are certain rights that have been bestowed on us by God through our tradition and that we need to hold to them. New immigrants, They don't have this problem. You don't have to worry about free speech with a lot of these guys. You don't have to worry about the idea of individualism or the ability to carry a firearm. They don't believe in any of that stuff. And if you bring enough of them in and they get to vote, then guess what? America doesn't believe in it either, because you've replaced the Americans that actually care and will stand against it. So yeah, when she says, well, you're just not Americans, it turns out immigrants are Americans, well, she's just telling you exactly what she believes.
But this is another political loser, right, Aaron? I know you remember. I remember all the polls leading up to the election. Donald Trump talked about immigration endlessly because it was pretty much number one or number two on every American's list for things they cared about. Isn't being the open borders party a loser?
Well, not if you get to replace enough of the voters, not if you bring in enough new people to share in your vote. Remember, yes, these people can't vote immediately in theory, though there are questions about that as well, but all of their children will have birthright citizenship, and they're all kind of banking on the fact that eventually we're going to get an amnesty plan. Let's not forget that the Republicans started to try to pass an amnesty plan the minute ICE got funded to actually do deportations. So it's not some ridiculous idea that you just bring in 20, 30 million people, sit around for a few years until the political pressure builds, pass the amnesty plan, and boom, you win every election going forward. Yeah, you might have lost a few in the interim because it's not popular, but you're setting yourself up for generational success. Now, the interesting thing is I've been listening to left-wing media, and they've been saying this might have been a mistake on our part. They're admitting the strategy. Like, they're full out admitting that, yes, we were looking at the demographics. We were making sure they trended a certain way. We were sure we were just going to automatically win these elections. But it turns out that some of the Hispanic immigrants we bring in, they actually want to be in America. Like, they actually like America as it is, and they started voting for Trump when they were not supposed to. They're supposed to be our loyal voters. Now, I don't think that the GOP should ultimately count on the based minority vote to get out there and change things, but it is funny that this ultimately seemed to backfire on some level of the Democrats. But they can't change the rhetoric. They've been doing it for decades and decades. Where do they go from here?
Well, where do they go from here? Because they want the White House back in 2028. But in order to win the Democrat primary, everyone sees Gavin Newsom, Pritzker, all these other losers out there taking stances that are going to be losers in places like Michigan or Pennsylvania. How does the party come back from what appears to be a death spiral?
That does seem to be a big problem for them, and it's a question that they are most certainly asking themselves. Remember when they spent $20 million to send that giant woman around to figure out how to talk to men and get them to vote for the party again? I mean, these people are absolutely desperate, and the links they're going to are insane, and they can't even take their own advice after spending months talking about how they need their own Joe Rogan, they need the podcast bros, they got to win men back. They basically just came to the conclusion, actually, no, men suck, and they just need to learn to vote first anyway. That was actually like the conclusion they came to. Now, I will say this. I think that there are two issues that can allow them to recover. One is war. If they can get a real anti-war movement going, and they're trying to do it around Israel and Palestine right now, that is fuel for the fire. They feel morally righteous when they're doing that. And to be fair, I don't want the United States involved in this. And so there's a lot of sympathy for some people saying, ultimately, we just don't want to be involved in foreign wars anymore. And if Trump has walked away from that in some way and the Democrats can embrace that, then they're stealing a core issue from Trump. So the Trump administration should not make that easy. The second thing is economics. Ultimately, we are still in a scenario where we are getting inflation, not as much as we used to, but we are still having a serious cost of living issue. And if the Republicans don't solve it, if they don't address it, if they just say, hey, young people, suck it up and figure it out, they're going to face a backlash because they were promised, the people of America were promised that caring about how much it costs to have eggs or how much it costs to buy a home was something that the Republicans now were making central to who they were. They were going to be raising families, making sure that we had a society where people can have children and live a decent life on hopefully maybe one day one income instead of forcing every mother into the workforce. These are things that Republicans need to carry through on, because if they don't, that leaves two holes I think that the Democrats could bind around. But right now, they're certainly scattered to the winds.
Aaron, as always, thank you, boss. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.